Good day, students. Welcome back to our Let's Review topic, and today's video will explain how are we going to separate mixture or components of mixture, especially if that is in the form of heterogeneous mixture. So let's start with the question, how is it possible to separate the coffee grounds when brewing it? Eventually or honestly, morning will not be completed for those who are working without coffee because coffee somehow stimulates our nervous system and we become active whenever we drink coffee because of its caffeine. So in here, we know that coffee is in solid form. All we need to do is to separate or to brew it in order to get the taste of this coffee. And there's a way on how we can separate those. In some coffee shops, they are somewhat available. Our objective is, of course, to describe how magnetism, physical manipulation, or handpicking, sieving, evaporation, filtration, and decantation can separate the components of mixtures. So how? One by one, let us see. In a mixture of sulfur and magnet, you will see that there is a way on how we can get the magnet. Or sabihin na natin metal mixed with sulfur powder, we can easily separate it with this way, and that way is called the magnetic separation. Since we all know that metals are attracted to magnets and non-metals are not, then therefore to separate those metals from non-metals, we can use this process of separation. We call it magnetic separation. It is also being utilized or used in industries such as junkyards. Am I right? Yeah, and separating metals from non-metal matter. Next, look at this picture and you'll see that you're using your hand and then there's a mixture of different seeds, and then you have to choose one only through hand picking. That's the other way on how we can do it, or we can separate the mixtures of seeds. Through hand picking, or also known as physical manipulation, it is possible. It is a kind of technique that used in separating in solid components of heterogeneous mixture. Sometimes you may be also, or you may also use some tools like forceps. If the components are big enough to be seen or picked, then you may use that, your hand or an instrument like forceps. Another way to separate mixture is, of course, sieving. Sieving is a physical mechanism of particle removal where a particle is denied access to a port or passageway, and sieve is the instrument used in order to do that. So unlike a filter paper, no, sieve to have bigger holes than a filter paper. So again, sieving, removal of some bigger particles mixed with smaller particles, especially that is in solid form. Another way to separate, let's say a suspension wherein a solid is mixed with a liquid and you want to separate it, depending on, it can also be used in liquid to liquid mixture like oil and water. You can also use this way, and we call it decantation. Decantation is a technique used in separating a less dense substance from a denser one. Another way to separate mixture, when you have a salt solution and then you want to separate the water or the liquid part to the solid part, which is the salt, then you may evaporate it, and that process or technique is called evaporation. We can separate soluble solid, because salt is soluble to liquid, from liquid. Or you may have sugar solution. Sugar is soluble in water, and for you to be able to separate the sugar from water again, you may evaporate it. You may boil it. What if, or if a soluble solid in liquid can be separated by evaporation, how about an insoluble solid in a liquid? Let's see. Well, in this case, you may now use a filter paper to do that. If it is really hard to separate them, then eventually this is the best way to separate it. We call it filtration process. Insoluble solids in a liquid can be separated by filtration, but you can also use somehow decantation process if that is possible. But in decantation, some of them are still mixed, so and cannot be filtered or separated probably completely. Yeah, so you may use filtration. It uses a filter like mesh, cloth, or a filter paper to separate solid components from a liquid. That process again or technique is called filtration. Insoluble solid is separated from liquid. So remember the different ways or techniques on how we can separate mixtures. 1 is magnetic separation, 2 is sieving, 3 we call it decantation, 4 filtration or filtration using filter paper, hand picking or hand manipulation, physical manipulation, and lastly evaporation. So I hope you learned something from how are we going to separate mixtures.